Hey, it's John. Sorry for the delay. Facebook, for some reason, told me I didn't have a strong enough connection to go live, and I was on Wi-Fi, so who knows. Anyway, today I plan on talking about Donald Trump's outreach to the black community because it's basically a bunch of BS. Here's the deal. You've noticed over the last week, Trump has talked a lot about how he cares about the concerns of African Americans and I'm sorry, just for those who have just joined, I'm talking about Trump and his outreach to the black community and why it's a bunch of BS. Basically, over the last week or so, we've seen Trump talk a lot about his supposed concerns about the black community. Classic Trump, they've been phrased in a way that's just incredibly offensive. I posted a number of clips on my Twitter account, at Aravosis, showing Trump talking about how basically all black people are poor, all black people are unemployed. Just that sort of classic out-of-touch guy supposedly trying to do outreach to the black community. But what I think should concern people even more about this isn't just the fact that Trump's outreach to the black community is kind of racist on its face. It's what's underlying his outreach. Trump has no intention of getting any black votes. Not that he wouldn't accept them. I'm sure he'd be happy if he got some black votes. But his goal here in talking about black voters isn't to actually get any black voters. Trump is trying to get white voters, and he's basically using black voters as bait. I haven't heard this discussed much on TV over the last week. I did see Dave Weigel talk today from the Washington Post on one of the networks, and Dave raised this as well, that basically Trump is playing the black card this last week so that he can convince white voters that they're not really racist, they're not really intolerant if they vote for Trump. The idea is, by Trump talking so much about African Americans, by Trump talking so much about his concern about poverty in the black community, by talking about how he wants black people to vote for him and he wants to help them as president, Trump is hoping that even though it's all a lie, it's enough to convince white people in the middle, independent voters, the so-called soccer moms, to vote for Trump, because they'll say, well, gosh, he talks about blacks and other minorities. He must actually care. Maybe these comments about what a racist he is aren't really true. Or as Dave Weigel put it, Dave even put it a little more crassly, although I don't disagree with Dave. Dave said that basically it lets white voters go to the ballot box and not think that they themselves are racist by voting for Trump. That basically it exonerates white voters themselves to say, gosh, maybe I'm not really a racist if I'm voting for Trump. Even he talks about how much he likes black people. Now, one of the things that's interesting, just in looking, I did a little more research on the Republican Party's history with the black vote. You all probably heard already about how Trump is doing, how in one poll in Ohio, I believe Trump got 0% of the black vote. In other polls, he's now getting anywhere from 1 to 3 or 4%. He's not doing real well. One sort of story we had up on the blog, even David Duke, the former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, is polling higher in his election in Louisiana than, in other words, more blacks are voting for David Duke than are voting for Trump in Louisiana. It's that bad. Now, historically, it's been really interesting. In 2012, 5% of blacks voted for Romney. Historically, since 1964, no more than 15% of the black community voted Republican. So they've never broken 15% since 1964, and it's actually been a lot less. PolitiFact did a nice write-up of this, which I'll try to link from my post, showing that it looks like, because the numbers are vague on their chart, but it looks like maybe 80 to 90% has always voted Democratic. Sorry, my friend Amy is just putting something here, allowing people to vote for him and be able to tell themselves they aren't racist exactly, except he is, and so they are. We all know that, but again, Trump, I think he's at such a deficit right now in the polls, and he's not counting on the black vote anyway, that he's hoping any percentage increase is going to help him. Another thing that this got me thinking of was Trump's outreach to the gay community. I'll do a quick little reminder here. I was reading up on Facebook Lives, and one of the things they tell you is to remind people to, there should be a follow button you see below the video. Click the follow, and it should give you a notice next time I do these videos. I'm going to try to do one a day between now and the election. Also, to the extent you click the like button or the share button All of that helps the video get higher rankings on Facebook so that they actually share it more themselves. They'll put it higher in people's feeds, so it helps to get it out there more. So I was supposed to remind you of that. And to remind people that I'm John Aravosis, I'm the editor of America Blog, and this is my regular Facebook Live show about analysis about the election. Anyway, I was going to mention the gay vote as well, because that's another community Trump has been sucking up to in the last few weeks. He's been... It's been really weird. He's been mentioning gays and the LGBT community a lot in his speeches. Many of the times are a very sort of weird reference. He'll try to put in how he's better for gays than Hillary. He'll talk about sort of some of the crazy right-wing talking points out there about, Hillary's taking money from bad right-wing anti-gay governments or something. And he's talking about the Clinton Foundation that is basically out there helping people with AIDS around the world. And some of the HIV medications are being paid for by governments who aren't that great on gay and trans rights. And you know what? I'm sure it's true, but I am more than happy to take money from governments in the Middle East and anywhere else if it's going to be able to help save people with AIDS around the world. That I'm happy to. And actually, just as an aside on that, a point that I mentioned to a reporter recently, back in the 1990s, Jesse Helms was a famous anti-gay politician, the worst of the worst, from North Carolina, truly a homophobic, bigot extreme. For any of you who weren't around back then, I can't compare him to anything nowadays short of the devil to explain to you just how bad this guy was. Well, even Jesse Helms ended up getting on board on the international AIDS battle. He went to Africa, got won over. Of course, it was the whole innocent victims of AIDS, quote unquote, that they weren't homosexuals, they were poor little children getting AIDS. But the point is, members of our community, because I knew friends of mine who were working on this issue, were happy to get Helms because the idea was to get him involved so that we could get more support, and that frankly, even if you can win the enemy, if you can even get Jesse Helms to support some AIDS research and some, not AIDS research, but some AIDS outreach, all the better, because then you sort of inoculate yourself from other people attacking your work, because even crazy Jesse Helms was on board. Anyway, so my point about that is, I think it's BS to attack Hillary and say the Clinton Foundation was willing to take money from anti-gay governments to help save people with AIDS. I'll take money from the devil if it helps save people with AIDS, frankly. So I'm not going to worry about that. But it does raise another issue, and I'm happy to sort of go off on a few tangents with this. Again, I'm sort of new to the Facebook Live thing, but one of the things Facebook recommends is to actually go longer than 10 minutes, which I was surprised. I was kind of thinking more the YouTube model of going 5 minutes. But oops, sorry, we've got another question. Talk about pandering. Can you say Pence? Oh yeah, actually, I was Paul Huber, a friend of mine, mentioned Pence. I put a post on my blog today on americablog.com. Go check it out. But about Mike Pence being on one of the shows on Fox, I think, and they played him the clip of Trump saying in the past few days, I'm going to win the black vote, and you mark my words, in 2020, when I'm up for re-election as president, I'm going to have 95% of the black vote. And there's a wonderful clip of Mike Pence, Donald Trump's vice president, laughing out loud when he heard this quote. So, even Pence knows it's BS. But I was just talking about the gay community and Trump's outreach there too. I think because the gay community traditionally has voted 20 or 30% for the Republican candidate, at least in the last several elections. It's been in that range. Trump may legitimately think by sucking up to the LGBT community, he may actually get a few more percentage points. In other words, even though I think Trump is still playing that game of trying to look like he's Mr. Liberal, not liberal, but trying to look like he's Mr. Tolerant to voters in the middle, who are sitting there, who aren't necessarily black, who aren't necessarily gay, but are saying, well, gosh, Trump was saying some nice things about LGBT people. That must mean he's not so intolerant, right? So I think that's part of Trump's play. But I think he's also thinking, if he can get a couple more percentage points vote from the gay community, that's fine. What I think is important to note here, and I've written about it on the blog before, and I'm going to do, I think, a separate Facebook Live about this very topic, is Hillary Clinton's record with the LGBT community. I've noticed, from a lot of the younger people out there, younger progressives, a lot of real questioning about just how progressive Hillary is generally, and particularly how progressive she is on LGBT issues. And I've got to tell you, I think a lot of that is based in the fact that folks don't know Hillary. And what I mean is, I think it's coming from a lot of young people who are newly involved in politics, who are newly involved in the election. They cared about Bernie or they care about the independent candidates, and that's great, and they're really excited about the election. But they didn't really live through the Clinton years. They didn't live through even the past decade of Hillary as senator of New York, and they weren't paying attention, understandably, because they weren't as involved in politics, and they really didn't know who Hillary was. They got to know her in the last couple of years through the campaign, and of course, through the campaign, you had Bernie criticizing Hillary, and understandably, because that was his job. You could criticize the other candidate. And you've got the right-wing noise machine that has been criticizing Hillary for the last 30 years, Hillary and Bill. On gay rights and LGBT rights overall, I cannot overstate how good the Clintons have been on this. And I know, again, for a lot of younger people, especially, I think they rightly think about Don't Ask, Don't Tell and DOME on the Defense of Marriage Act, both of which happened under Clinton, President Clinton. And they say, how can you support these guys? These are the people who came up with these horrible policies. That's enough to write them off. It's really not. I'll go into some of this right now. Why not? But there's a couple different issues going on here. First of all, you've got to think of the time it's in, okay? In 1993, when Bill Clinton became president that January, it was beyond historic in the gay community to have someone who publicly embraced us. Bill Clinton had an openly gay, openly HIV positive speaker at the Democratic Convention during prime time, which is the coveted slot. He had Bob Hattoy, who was an old-time friend of his who then went on to work in the administration and then died several years later. Bob was wonderful, funny guy, smart guy, outspoken activist. Bob was there also as an activist, mind you. Bob was kind of a crazy activist too. And Bill Clinton had him speaking at the convention in 1992. You didn't do that in that era. That was unheard of on the gay angle, but also on the person with AIDS angle. You just didn't have your campaign embrace people like that. It was a whole different era, folks. Even before that, there's a wonderful photo out there. I just realized I look like I have Mickey Mouse ears with the plates behind me. It's one of those Snapchat filters. Getting back to more serious stuff. Hillary Clinton, back in either 1991 or 1990, there's a wonderful photo of her meeting with a number of AIDS activists. And this was, I think it's 1991 probably. This is when Bill Clinton is running for president. She's running, so to speak, to be first lady. Back when first ladies stood by their man and baked apple pie and cookies, and that's all they did. They were, and they could talk about volunteering or education, but they were not supposed to get involved in serious issues. That's not who they were, and America didn't like it. Did not like first ladies to be, uppity women who were going to make a difference. Not acceptable, especially among Republicans, but even among Dems, it was still a bit surprising. So you had Hillary out there who goes and meets with AIDS groups. There's a wonderful picture of Hillary meeting with AIDS activists in 1991 as, sort of first lady candidate, so to speak. And again, I just can't tell you, for our community, this was before we had the drugs that were saving. I think there was the beginning of retrovirals for people with AIDS, but it wasn't the drugs we've got today where basically HIV and AIDS is not a death sentence. Back then, it was still a death sentence. My friend Paul died in that year, 1991. You died back then. You were lucky if you lived, some did, but most didn't. So the idea of Hillary being able to sit down with, diseased pariahs, quote unquote, was the phrase that gay people would sort of use, or HIV positive people would use ironically about themselves, was just huge. And I think that's what people need to understand is just the symbolism of the embrace the Clintons gave us in 1992 that was so unheard of back then. It was so important symbolically for us, so important in terms of empowering the community, so important of culturally sending a message to other politicians, to other Democrats, to the country at large, that you just cannot overstate how important this was. Now, you can get into some of the policies. We can talk about Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I worked on Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I was volunteering at the time, or being a fellow, or whatever you want to call it, with Senator Kennedy's office, who took the lead on Don't Ask, Don't Tell, on basically working to get gays in the military ban repealed. As you know, one of the top promises Bill Clinton made during his presidential campaign was to get gays in the military repealed. And right out the gate, I want to say it was even before Clinton got sworn in, the issue came to a head. It came to a head like a week or two before the inaugural, as I recall, so like early January. Colin Powell, who was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff at the Pentagon back then, was opposed to lifting the ban on gays. Back then, there was a ban completely on gays, lots of witch hunts against gay, lesbian, transgender people. It was horrible. Powell, who was really pissed about this, wanted to stop it. He had the support of Sam Nunn, who was the Democratic chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, very powerful man and real trouble for us because he was a Democrat and we were Democrats, so was really undercutting us. And they made the issue come to a head too quickly. Clinton got caught off guard, and the entire thing ended up being a fiasco. What ended up coming out as a result was a compromise that none of us liked at the time, called the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. What I think, there's a couple things important here. First of all, Don't Ask, Don't Tell happened because Clinton lost when he tried to lift the ban. Clinton didn't make Don't Ask, Don't Tell happen. Clinton tried to lift the ban entirely before its time, before America was ready for it, but he still said he was going to help our community, damn it, and he tried and he failed, and that's why we got Don't Ask, Don't Tell. We didn't get Don't Ask, Don't Tell because Bill Clinton said, hey, let's go ban gays. It happened because Bill Clinton tried to get rid of the ban, and we got this replacement that was actually better. It still sucked, but it was better. It said that you could serve, but you couldn't out yourself. You had to keep quiet. There wouldn't be any more witch hunts. There were still some witch hunts, but not like there were before. And if you ask service members today, they will tell you, most of them will tell you, things definitely got better under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, even though it was horrible. Of course it was horrible. We were still basically telling gay people you can't serve openly, and trans people as well. But that's one of the first points, is to realize Bill Clinton didn't come up with Don't Ask, Don't Tell. It's not like gay people could serve before Bill Clinton. It was Bill Clinton tried to repeal the outright ban on gay people serving in the military and failed. That's why we got Don't Ask, Don't Tell. DOMA, Defense of Marriage Act, on the other hand, I'm not going to defend that piece of shit. Not going to happen. That was a mess. It got passed by the Democrats, joining the Republicans in Congress. Clinton signed it at the time. Now, mind you, we're talking Bill Clinton. We're not talking Hillary. So I think there's a little bit of game right here we're playing if we're trying to blame Hillary for Bill Clinton's law. But yeah, Bill Clinton had bragged about it during the 1996 campaign. He ran radio ads in the South for a short while, bragging that he had supported DOMA. A bunch of us, a lot of people in the community screamed about that. Clinton pulled the ads. But it is true that Clinton supported DOMA. He felt like there was nothing he could do. Now, one thing to consider with DOMA, this was 1996. Civil unions weren't even cool back in 1996. It wasn't until the 2000 campaign that, what's his name? Howard Dean. Howard Dean, who we love, Howard Dean was for civil unions in the year 2000, and that was considered so edgy that the big talk was, how will this affect Howard Dean's presidential race? Is it going to hurt him that he's for civil unions? Okay, that's how edgy civil unions were in the year 2000. So imagine back in 1996 or 1995, whichever it was, that DOMA got passed. Imagine how edgy marriage was for gay people when even civil unions weren't much of a consideration in 1996. That does not excuse DOMA, but you've got to think of the eras we're talking about. Now, putting all of that beside, Clinton did so many other things that were amazing for the gay community. We had so many high-level appointments in the administration, including Roberta Ochtenberg, who was a San Francisco city supervisor. I believe that was what she was, and then came and was an assistant secretary at HUD. Clinton put his neck out trying to get her nomination through, taking on Jesse Helms, who called her a damned lesbian. And again, Clinton didn't have to do it. He busted his ass trying to get her through, and then when Congress wouldn't do it, when the Senate wouldn't do it, he finally, I believe, just recessed appointed Roberta so she would get in there anyway. And again, at the risk of ticking off the Republicans, he didn't care. Jim Hormel, our first openly gay ambassador under Bill Clinton. There were so many appointments. On HIV/AIDS, so many things the Clinton administration did in terms of increased funding through Congress, in terms of just the programmatic outreach that we certainly know this is, mind you, again, this is only 4 years after the Reagan administration that we're talking when Bill Clinton came in. That's the era we are looking at. And again, how historic it was that when gay people literally feel that Reagan, and to a degree, my friend Paul Clark, who died in 1991, absolutely felt that George Bush helped kill him. He told me that many times. That you finally had a president who was willing to support these programs, who was willing to embrace people with AIDS, who was willing to outreach to their community, safe sex education, so many different things. it was just historic. I've got a post on the blog, America Blog. You can go and check that out if you want to learn more about Bill Clinton's role. Final point I make about Hillary, really interesting, just in the last few years. One of the huge things Hillary did for the LGBT community was back in 2011. She did two things, actually. One, she talked to the United Nations, and I believe it was in Geneva at the headquarters there, not the headquarters here in New York. Hillary goes and talks. None of us had a heads up that she was going to talk about anything, let alone anything gay. I mean, I had no idea. I think it's possible I heard she might mention gay, and I thought, I'll check it out later, whatever. But none of us knew that Hillary was going to literally devote her entire speech to gay and trans rights. Just to remind people, I'm John Aravosis, editor of America Blog. This is my Facebook Live broadcast, a regular election analysis. Today we're talking about Donald Trump's outreach to the black community, and it got me into a discussion on the LGBT community, Trump's outreach there, but also to what degree the Democrats really have been good and Hillary really has been good on LGBT rights, and she has. One thing to remind folks, remember, click the follow button below my image there. That should give you notification next time I do a broadcast. I'm hoping to do one a day, at least during the week. Also, make sure you like and or share the broadcast. That'll help get it out to more people. It'll also help Facebook decide that it's a popular broadcast, and it means they'll put it higher up in people's news feeds, apparently, I read. Getting back to Hillary, I knew I was going to do this. I was going to forget what I was saying about Hillary. And Hillary, 2011, right. Hillary gives this speech to the UN where she says, gay rights are human rights and human rights are gay rights, where she's sitting in front of leaders from all over the world who can't stand gay people. The Russians, leaders in Africa, a number of leaders in Asia. I mean, governments all over the world who hate our living guts. And Hillary is lecturing them about how gay rights are civil rights, which these guys can't stand. She's lecturing them about how gay rights are not a Western import, because that's sort of a big hoo-ha in some African countries. They believe that homosexuality is not an African value, that it was imported of cultural value of the West. That she would take that on directly. It was an amazing half-hour speech. All of us were blown away that she would do this. It just had never happened within the context of the UN. And Hillary was willing to do it. Why do it? She didn't get anything out of it. She wasn't running for president back then. It's not like Obama needed the support at home. She did it because she cared about our issues and she was willing to take it on. Another thing even more interesting that happened that year was Hillary did a fix for transgender people and their passports. You can Google it. Politico actually, I think, recently did a nice story on this, talking about how it was something that happened and Hillary didn't even brag about it. She just fixed it quietly and let it go. But how State Department did a fix for transgender people so they could get the accurate passport reflecting their actual gender identity. This is the kind of stuff Hillary has done for our community. No presidential candidate has been that outspoken for us other than Barack Obama himself. And for those of you who don't remember, back in 2008, it was a close tie for a lot of us whether to vote for Hillary or Obama based on LGBT issues. Because basically, as I recall, I think Obama was a smidgen better than Hillary, but only because he was for repealing all of DOMA, and I think Hillary was for repealing most of DOMA, and maybe one provision or not, something weird like that. But otherwise, the community was basically in favor of Hillary more than Obama at that point. And the big discussion was, what could Obama do to get the gay community, because we were such Hillary supporters. So this is really a new concept that people have come up with, this notion that Hillary supposedly doesn't support the gay community. It's just, or the LGBT community. It's not true. The Clintons historically have, and it's just a point worth mentioning. Now, I don't know, I'll keep a look here. If anybody has any questions or anything else, I don't have much more to add. As I said, just to recap, I just wanted to talk about the gay community overall, the black community, Trump reaching out to the black community, and how it basically was a farce. He was reaching out to the black community as bait to get white voters, to convince white people that, oh, Trump is such a nice guy. He reaches out to blacks. Maybe he's not such a racist. We can vote for him. But crassly, the intent was never to get black voters. He never expects to get black voters. And I just wish people would call him out more on that, because I think it's kind of racist on its face. The idea that you're not reaching out to African-American voters because you care about African-American voters. You're doing it because you're trying to get white people to vote for you, and you couldn't care less about African-American people. It's classic Trump, it's classic Republican, and it just needs to be exposed. All right, if anybody else, I don't see any questions here, although the way this thing worked before, some popped up on Facebook later, whatever. All right, well, anyway, glad to see a number of my friends. Oh, my friend Carl's there. Hey, Carl. Aren't you supposed to be at work? But in any case, I appreciate you guys coming on. I'll do, like I said, hopefully do one of these a day, come up with each topic each day, but please do click the follow button, please do click the like button, and please do click the share button. It helps get these around, it helps Facebook share them more, and you can always follow these on Facebook once I post it there later. All right, thanks everybody, talk to you later. Oh, there's my Mickey Mouse ears again. Wait, there we go. All right, bye.